Hi there, this is the week 6 help video, and I waited a couple extra days because I only got 2 questions on the Google Doc that I posted, so I thought I'd wait and see if anybody else had questions to post. But since that's all there is, I'll go ahead and just respond to those 2. So the first one I can answer pretty quickly. It was, as somebody had asked about how do you communicate to someone that you're still learning Spanish. And probably the simplest way to do that is just to say, no hablo mucho español. I don't speak much Spanish. And sometimes if you have a really good pronunciation, good accent, like a lot of you do, with the little Spanish that you do speak, people can assume that you speak a lot more. And so you'll say something really simple and they'll take off on this whole conversation. So just responding, lo siento, I'm sorry, no hablo mucho español can be a good way to let them know, oh yeah, you're still learning. So that's probably the simplest way to deal with that situation. The other question was asking about the interrogative words, things like como, que, and then cuál or que, which one to use where. So como and que, what that comes down to is the fact that there are some idiomatic expressions, things that don't translate literally word for word between English and Spanish. So like in English, we would say, what is your name? And in Spanish, we say, how do you call yourself? So it's those phrases that don't translate literally word for word that it makes it seem like como and que mean the same thing. They really don't. But the best way, my best recommendation for those is to learn some of these phrases as set vocabulary things to memorize, rather than trying to translate them literally word for word. So just learn como te llamas means what is your name. So if you need to make yourself a flashcard, or that kind of thing. So some of those where they don't translate literally, just make yourself a card and memorize the phrase, the whole phrase or the whole sentence itself. And that's probably the best way to deal with those, with the distinction between como and que. Now the difference between que and cuál is a little bit different because those do have different meanings, but they're kind of used interchangeably in some ways. So que most basically means what, and cuál means which. So if there's a selection involved, you're probably going to use cuál or cuáles. And if you're asking about identification or definition, you're going to use que. But the thing that complicates it, especially in my Spanish lab, is that the textbook rule says you don't use cuál right before a noun. So like, let's say I'm asking you what your favorite book is. If I say, ¿cuál es tu libro favorito? Then I would use cuál, indicating that there's a selection of all of the books in the world. Which one is your favorite? If I reworded it a little bit in its still correct order and said the question word followed immediately by the noun libro, then according to the textbook rules, I'd need to switch and say que. ¿Qué libro es tu favorito? Because according to the book, you can't say cuál libro es tu favorito because cuál can't be immediately followed by a noun. Now, for most native Spanish speakers that you talk to, that rule is one of those things that's kind of falling out of use. It's like in English, we have a number of rules that technically are the grammatical rule, but that people don't generally follow in conversational speech. So that's one of those rules. So in my Spanish lab, you would never use cuál right before a noun. In general spoken Spanish, you will hear it and probably use it much more frequently. And then there's also some things that we don't necessarily think of as being a selection where we would use cuál, like ¿cuál es tu número de teléfono? So when I was learning it, the way I kind of tricked myself into it was like, of all the phone numbers in the phone book, of course we don't use phone books anymore, but of all the phone numbers in the phone book, which one is yours? ¿Cuál es tu número de teléfono? So some of those, again, you just kind of have to memorize and learn it as a set phrase for yourself. Hopefully that was helpful. Just keep practicing and working with those, with the difference between que and cuál, and always ask yourself, is this selection or identification? And hopefully that will help you distinguish between the two. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you all in the week 7 help video. Have a great weekend.